Quick reminder to fill out our sign-in sheet anytime throughout the night. All right, on to the intros.
Yeah, I can start. Hi, I'm Saudi, and I have done a startup internship, which is like right next to me, and I also took summer classes last summer. So, yeah, I went from internship to classes, which might be interesting to people who are like, oh, if I had an internship once, like that's what I have to do with the rest of my summers to like keep going forward. But yeah, it's not, and I really enjoyed taking summer classes, and I'm definitely um, gonna talk about that later. So that's all I have to say. Nora, I think, was next.
Hey everyone, I'm Nora. So I've interned at Northrop Grumman. That was after my second year. And then I did research after my third year because I was more interested in that after getting sort of that experience with the internship. Um, and that was in a combustion lab here at UCLA.
Hi, I'm Shivani. My pronouns are she, her. So the summer after my freshman year, I took some math classes at UC Berkeley, and I also tried to start teaching myself machine learning, which was interesting and fun. And the summer after my sophomore year, I worked in a research lab at UCLA, working on space stuff, aka for some satellites that UCLA launched, which was pretty fun. And after my junior year, I worked at Microsoft, and I also did some mental health self-care work that summer, which was fun. And with that, I'll pass it off to the amazing Leo.
Thank you, Sharvani. Hi, my name is Leo. I'm a third year computer science student. And I guess for my summer activities, in my first year summer, I worked as a lifeguard. But on top of that, I actually took an opportunity to write a full stack application for the pool I was working at. That was pretty neat. And then in my second year, I just did a bunch of programming, like a ton of programming and personal projects. And that kind of led to the volunteering portion there. I also took a few summer classes. So passing it off to Garrett then.
Hi everyone, my name is Garrett. I use he, him pronouns. And then I'm a third year. So 2 summers ago, after my freshman year, I was a new student advisor. Most of you are probably familiar with that. It was super fun, very intense, but I got a lot from it. And then last summer, I was taking MATLAB over summer, and then just working a lot on like club stuff and like making connections in like at UCLA.
All right. Thank you, panelists. And then we will now move on to moderator questions, which we have prepared ahead of time. We would like to remind all attendees to feel free to ask follow-up questions to our moderator questions by either raising their hand or writing them in chat, which we will read out loud. But also note that we will open up the floor at around 6:40 after the moderator questions for any specific questions for any of the panelists. All right, so for our first moderator question of the night, we would like to ask each panelist how they got their opportunity, starting with Sadi.
Yeah, so my startup internship, I actually got through like a connection my dad had. So I would say the advice to take away from that is to just like utilize your network as much as you can. Reach out to people, even if you're not sure that they might have a position for you, because even if they don't, it shows like initiative and interest in whatever they're doing. So for future opportunities, like that's a good thing. And yeah, it gives you practice sending like cold emails, which is always hard to do. But yeah, use your network is what I would have to say about that. And I'll pass it off to Nora.
Yeah, so for my first internship, I actually got that through talking to representatives at the career fair. So don't be discouraged by how big it is and kind of feeling like you're going to get ghosted by a lot of companies. I did get ghosted by a lot of companies, but I ended up getting one of the internships. And then the research position I got through just knowing the professor already, because I'm pretty involved in Rocket Project, and the professor whose lab I was involved in was the faculty advisor for that. So he kind of already knew who I was. And then I also did get an internship that I'm doing right now part-time during the year that I got just by applying online and then knowing a couple people that work there already. So again, this sort of connections thing, I just asked them if they could send my resume around, so that helped me get that internship as well.
So for summer classes, I just applied and they let me take it. But one thing I do want to note is, you know, most people don't take classes at UC Berkeley if they're students at UCLA, but I noticed that there was a class called differential equations and linear algebra. So I took one class. I petitioned to get credit for both of those math classes at UCLA, and thus I took one math class and got credit for two. So TLDR, there are a lot of courses to take. Take credit however you can get it, and, you know, just do what's best for you there. For my research lab position, I actually applied to join the lab part-time as a software developer in the fall of 2018. So this was like way before. And like, I honestly saw it on Facebook. So like social media literally got me like my dream research position at UCLA. So, you know, the internet is good for some things. And that was a really great, rewarding experience. And then the way I got my internship at Microsoft is I went to EWI, and that's actually the first contact I had with that recruiter, which is why I really do like the small, intimate setting that EWI gives, because it allowed me to interact with the recruiter in a way that they were actually down to, like, you know, explore whether I could be a fit at the company. So that was pretty neat.
Gosh, for both of my opportunities, I more or less had to create them. So for the first one, when I was working as a lifeguard, that was a continuation from my position as head lifeguard the previous year. But then what happened is for the full stack application, I just identified that we didn't have like an electronic check-in system at the pool and stuff. And I just went ahead and wrote one up after I asked my boss if that was okay. And then for my second year, when I say I did a bunch of programming, I just mean like a lot of open source stuff and like working with clubs. And that's also something that you can just kind of take the initiative on. It's always there if you have the will to go out and do it. So.
So for my first summer activity, which is being a new student advisor, that's just an application. It's open to any UCLA student, including if you're already like graduating that summer. It's a rather intense application process, but they're always in need of engineers. So I'm pretty sure that's everyone here. So that application process, as long as you can represent yourself well and tell them that you're an engineer, it's a pretty safe bet as long as you can commit your summer to that.
So we have a question in the chat for Leo. So do they still use your work, and like, does someone maintain it?
Yeah, so I was gonna write up an answer, but let's go ahead and say it. So my work from my first year actually with the pool is not being maintained right now because the pool actually had to close down because of COVID. So their main season's in the summer, right? And by the time that things kind of rolled over, it just didn't work out. But I plan on maintaining it when basically everything starts back up again. And then for second year, yeah, it was mostly like club stuff, and then one external organization as well, and that's still being maintained.
And so a follow-up question so of course, like, connections are really important, like Saudi and Nora said. So how do you start looking for those connections, and like, how do you maintain them?
Yeah, I would say like my experience at least was kind of easier, I guess, because it was like within my family. So it was like a familial connection. But I would say, like, don't be afraid to send emails out. Like, you might get ghosted, but that's like I mean, we all go through that. Like, that's just the risk of being alive right now. So like, yeah, I would just say, like, have a template of like email you might want to send it, just to make it easier for yourself. And like, you know, anyone you think might have an opportunity or works at a place that you might be interested in like doing something at, you never really know. And especially for like small companies, they don't really like advertise their positions as like a company like Microsoft or Amazon might do. So you kind of need to have the initiative if you want to like be there. So yeah, I would say practice your cold emailing skills, and you might get some more.
I think for me, I don't know any family members that are engineers. I didn't really know any engineers before going to college. So just being really involved in a club, I think helped me get a lot of those connections, because the people who are in that club are going to graduate and go on and work at companies that you want to work at. So getting to know people through that, you know, kind of making sure that they see that you're working hard and that sort of thing. They'll give you a good recommendation. They'll send your resume to a manager or something like that. And even as a second year, when I didn't necessarily have those connections, I think just practicing before you go to the career fair really helped me. Like I practiced the elevator pitch I was going to give with my friends, just to make sure that that was really good. And I think that just made a good impression on the recruiter I talked to, and then I managed to get that connection.
All right, and we have a follow-up question for Leo. How did you maintain motivation for your own projects when there weren't external factors? Like, how do you keep on track for the summer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to be honest. The way that I kind of dealt with it is I don't know. You have to play the hand you're dealt, really, right? So the way that I usually do my work when I'm working on like, you know, independent projects and stuff is I tend to get very short bursts of, you know, intense motivation to get it done. But I need to rest for a little bit after that, so that way I don't burn myself out. Because the last thing you want to have happen to you when you're working on something either on your own or in like a small team is burning out and then just hating the work you're doing. So I think that, yeah, really just kind of know how to recognize when you've got those bursts going on, and that'll help you maintain motivation, but also try and do other things in between. That's kind of like the big thing that everyone's taking away, I think, from Zoom fatigue. Try and mix stuff in.
Okay, and we have another question. Are you guys still in contact with any managers or recruiters that you've worked with, and like maybe like connected on LinkedIn or anything, just to like maintain that connection?
Yeah, I think I'm still connected with different recruiters and managers that I've talked to. There was even this startup that I applied to and went through the whole sort of interview cycle, and then they didn't end up having an internship program that summer. They canceled it. But I stayed connected with the recruiter that I was talking to a lot. So, you know, maybe if they decide that they want to take me on later, I think that's helpful to have. So anyone that you talk to, it's good to connect with them on LinkedIn.
Definitely big +1 to that. Like I'm connected with the recruiters that I talked to like years ago at EWI. My God, it's been years. And like the research lab that I started working at sophomore year, I'm still there now, but like I have definitely learned to like talk to like my team members, not just for what I need to get done in the lab, but also about future careers. Like I talked to them about companies I was interested in working in and the type of work I wanted to do. And because they know more about the field, because they literally do this research for a living, they were able to direct me to opportunities I wouldn't have known existed otherwise, which was really great. Like that was actually the way I found out that like space startups exist. So that was really interesting for me, because I always thought it was just Northrop and then like Lockheed and that's it. But that's not the case at all. So like finding those connections for people who like specialize in the kind of work you're interested in and keeping in contact with them, even just from a mentor-mentee perspective, a lot of them are down to help out, which is really great. And finally, student clubs often sometimes result in like really great connections too. Like I had to do sponsorship for a couple of events for the Society of Women Engineers, and the recruiters just kept asking me if I wanted to work with them based on the stuff I did for my clubs. So even the stuff you do for your student organizations has a lot of value because you put in so much work and time into the events and initiatives that you put on that recruiters are also down to recruit based on the fact that you're part of like some XYZ club, which is like super neat. And I didn't know about that earlier.
All right, so to keep on schedule, we'd like to ask all panelists the highlights and the downsides of their activity.
So for the internship, I would say the downside, because it was such a small company, they didn't really have like a program set up or like, you know, an intern project set up. So I was doing a lot of not necessarily like technical stuff. So I feel like I didn't really gain a ton of skills with the like time I spent there. It was more of like you know, make coffee in the morning, like make a demo for us, that kind of thing. So I would say like that was the downside. And then the highlight was just like learning how to work in an office on a team, having that experience to go forward. And like the people I met were very nice. But yeah, I would say like I did a summer where I did just took classes at UCLA, and like I feel like I gained more like skills from that summer than my internship because I really like wasn't guided much. So I think that's also something to consider when like going after an internship. Like, what are you really going to get out of it? Is it just going to kind of be like work hours, or are you really going to gain technical skills by being there? But yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the company internship that I had after my second year, I actually really didn't enjoy because it was a big company and I felt like I wasn't kind of doing anything that contributed to anything. Um, so I think that gave me good perspective just to know that I don't want to work at a big company. So I at least was glad that I had that experience. So that was what kind of motivated me to go towards research that summer after. Which I enjoyed a lot more because it was kind of self-motivated and I was working on stuff that I was interested in. It was kind of guided by my own interest. So I think I really appreciated having both of those experiences just because I could figure out more of what I would want to do in the future after I graduate.
I'll touch on both my Microsoft internship and like my research lab summer a little bit. So pros of like the Microsoft internship. I'm someone that's always been very curious about big tech and how those large companies function, often because I kind of like critiquing what they do a lot sometimes. So for me, being at Microsoft was like the super fun investigation slash interrogation. I got to see like how these large companies work like from the inside, and I really got to like explore and like find out what methodologies do they try out, how do these teams function, like is there a supportive culture, and like for me that was like super cool. So like, you know, I was interested in the big tech internship, but kind of like from the perspective of like someone going into like a super large house or something and like checking out all these fancy new rooms. It was just like exciting because I've never really seen it from the inside. The downsides was definitely the 9 to 5 culture and like lack of feeling like I had ownership or direction over what I was doing was something that like I did not cope with well, because I like having control over what I'm doing. So that was something that I kind of had to reconcile, where I was like, okay, actually being at a big company and like just working on like this stuff is actually not ending up great for my mental health. So I kind of had to like reconcile, like, you know, what am I looking for in a job? Like, what do I need so that I feel happy and secure, like making a living? So I had to like find workarounds and see like, can I facilitate this through like working at Microsoft, or like, should I not be working in big tech? Because like it did not do wonders for my mental health. For the research lab, the pros were I did get a lot of ownership over my work because like it's a small lab. They need students to like take ownership and take leadership and like do things. So like that actually worked out really great for me that summer. The cons were mostly just that it was a lot of work. So like that's actually where I learned about like setting boundaries for myself. So I didn't end up going into work like 7 days a week or things like that. So like I think both of those like experiences were pretty contrasting, but they kind of showed me like, you know, that there are like limits to both sides. Like you can't be going into work 7 days a week, but also like you need to feel like you have some ownership over what you're doing, at least for me. So it was kind of like an exploration of what I want in a job. So like instead of seeing like each summer's like thing as like, I don't know, like I'm supposed to be doing research now, or I'm supposed to be doing like an industry internship, for me it's kind of just like an exploration, because it's a lot easier to try out what I like and don't like now as opposed to when I have a full-time job. So yeah, I don't know, kind of treating everything like an experiment or a chance to explore and learn more about this new field you may not know about before, I think was what really helped me like find a healthy mindset regardless of like whatever I was doing at the moment.
Gosh, for my activities, Going off of what Shirvani mentioned about setting your boundaries and Allison's follow-up, actually, the biggest thing that I took away from all of it, which is both a blessing and a curse, is time management. So when you're working, either on your own or on something that doesn't necessarily have like a timetable, it's definitely a dangerous situation to be in, because when you're basically let out there, you're just thrown off into the deep end. So my work schedule in the first, I want to say, month or so was pretty all over the place. But given a few weeks, I kind of figured out how to manage my time better. And some of the critical things that I realized were like, having free time doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. It's not like, your whole free time is not your availability. That's the big takeaway that I got. Sharvani, thank you. And I definitely learned a ton about just kind of how I worked from those 2 summers. So I think that that's a really important takeaway from that.
For my summer as a new student advisor, I honestly think that my biggest takeaways from that were just my interpersonal skills. I learned so much about having to deal with a lot of different people, because you have over the course of the summer almost 200 students. So getting to work with a lot of different personality types and managing them, especially learning how to sort of be in charge and guide people who are probably 2 months younger than you to 10 years older than you was a very interesting experience. I honestly learned so much from that. And I also got so many connections from being a new student advisor, both in the professional staff at UCLA, and also it is such a big advantage to have a lot of students that at UCLA. They're currently getting me through a lot of my classes. It's so wonderful to know smart young people. And then as far as downsides go, I definitely say it is your whole summer. You live, breathe everything new student advisor, because it's the only thing you have time to do. And it can be a stressful environment. So if you function in a high stress environment well, then it's great for you. If you don't, it's probably not. But I got so many skills and connections out of it that it was definitely worth it.
All right, so we have a question from Kelly. Did you find any activities, jobs, or positions that you guys also take into the academic year from the summer and past summer break? And how did you manage time-wise to stay on top of your classes?
So the internship that I'm currently doing right now is part-time during the school year, and then it'll be transitioning into full-time over the summer. So for me, I think my managers and the people I work with just really understand that I'm a student first. So if I have midterms, if I have to study for finals, I just kind of communicate that to them. And they understand if I can't work as much during a certain week because of that. So I think it's been pretty manageable because I'm allowed to set my own hours and kind of work alongside my class schedule for that.
So the work I did for my research lab over the summer, it inadvertently led to me getting somewhat of a leadership position in that research lab over the school year, which was my part-time job. And I guess this is not the happiest thing, but it was a lot for me. It was a lot to manage on top of classes. And honestly, the way I got through it was my friends kind of forcing me to set boundaries for myself, because at one point they were like, we will ban you from accessing this code base if you don't take a break. And I was like, yikes, that means I should probably fix something if this is the state we're at. So all of that is to say, learning to set boundaries for yourself, I think, is the most important thing, especially going into the school year, because I kind of was I handled this over the summer, and I had a bunch of stuff going on then, so I can handle it during the school year. No, classes are a whole thing, and computer science or any engineering major or any major is not the easiest thing in the world. So like a little bit into the school year, I had to learn to like scale down. So like while it was great that like I got like this new leadership position over the school year, the only reason it ended up being sustainable is because like I sat down and like I like sparked this whole conversation with my team where I was like, listen, what we're all doing right now is a little rough for the undergraduates who still have to attend class. So like, how can we restructure the team or like, you know, divide responsibility so that we're all having a better existence? And like, once we sat down and had that conversation, things were a lot better. But like, it took me like sparking that conversation to make it happen. So like TLDR, like the people that you're reporting to like may not always be aware of how rough things are for you or how easy things are for you. So like learning how to advocate for yourself or like learning how to advocate for others if you notice they're having a rough time is like one of the best skills you can learn as an undergraduate, because that translates to your professional life, whether you go into industry or academia or become like a freelance, super cool National Geographic photographer. Like, yeah, just solidarity with your peers and like always, you know, prioritizing what you need and communicating that to others who can do something to change the situation and help you, I think is super important. And like, it worked out okay because I'm still here and working with that lab. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
I guess I can kind of go ahead and throw in my 2 cents. The nice thing about having or working a part-time job in my first year summer was that it was that compartmentalized. I mean, basically once you wrapped up the summer, you were done. So it made life much easier for me personally as a first year going into my second. But then for my second year summer, I actually had some of my club work rolling it over into more like leadership responsibilities. And honestly, that kind of snowballed out of hand pretty quickly. So just be very cautious with how much work you're taking on when you're setting your own schedules, because it will get out of hand if you're not very vigilant about it.
All right, and then a quick question about balancing all your work over the summer and mental health. What advice would you give someone who's taking on too much over the summer and might not know it?
I would say like check in with yourself regularly. Like if you're not feeling good about what you're doing, reevaluate and kind of try to pinpoint what exactly about like your work is like doesn't feel right, I guess. But yeah, I guess like self-reflectance is very important in that sense. And like getting to know yourself a little bit better, which is honestly always a good thing. So yeah.
This might not, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sharvani, if you're going to. Oh, okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so my roommate made me do this the first time that she thought I was overbooking myself, and it was super useful and it gave me a new perspective on life. She made me make a chart of the 24 hours I have in a day, block off like 10 hours for like sleeping and another 2 hours for like eating and showering and stuff. And then she was like, all right, realistically, you have this much time in the day. You need time to relax, a block of additional time for that too. And she literally made me like pretty much mathematically prove that however much I'd taken on was not physically possible to like get done, which was kind of a reality check because in the moment you're always like, I can do it. But like forcing myself to look at how I was going to spend 7 days of my week was what made me realize I needed to like chill out a bit. So yeah, like, if like, you know, just thinking in your head isn't doing it, mathematically proving it to yourself, I think kind of did it in for me because as a STEM major, I cannot ignore the numbers. But yeah, it's a really small thing, but it really worked for me.
Oh, go ahead, Garrett. Sorry.
Now you go, you're in line.
Okay, sure, I'll go. I was just going to say that in some situations, this might not be the solution for you, but you may find some benefit in communicating that to your superiors, that you have a little bit too much on your plate. Again, it varies from situation to situation. In some cases, it's not the best idea, but I had to do that at one point when I was lifeguarding, and it actually worked out really well.
So I don't know if any of y'all are this type of person, but if like one of your friends is like, oh my goodness, I only got 6.5 hours of sleep last night, I'm exhausted, and you're the type of person to go, oh, I only got 5, ha ha ha, and you catch yourself doing that often, first of all, check yourself. That means you're something unhealthy, and you should also reevaluate why you get like pleasure from being in a worse situation than someone else. because that was very much me. So check yourself.
So we have a follow-up question, or a question in the chat. So, like, what type of soft skills did you guys develop in your activities? Yeah, and it's open to everyone.
I guess I can go. I sort of touched a lot on it earlier, but the soft skills that I built that I honestly think are really, really important, especially within like engineering, is like learning to work well with other people, of like who work, like not everyone has the same communication style, and that's not like a bad thing or anything, but like just learning to work with different communication styles. And especially it's shockingly useful to be able to work with people, like especially if you're like trying to teach someone older than you. I think that's a really valuable skill, because oftentimes if you know something more than someone older than you, they'll automatically assume that you just don't know what you're talking about. And in being able to like build that skill, I think is super important. And also definitely being an NSA helped me, like, I don't know, just like display myself in a way that was super good with, like, especially with engineers, like displaying ourselves as someone personable, I feel like is an issue that we have collectively. So being able to like show that you're like more than just a robot, always great skills.
I'd say the big thing is like empathy, which was grounded in me having to manage people. Like learning to like put myself in other shoes, see where they were coming from, and seeing how I could meet them halfway is not something I would have learned unless I had been forced into like a position of leadership. But I think it's one of the most important skills I've learned, because it means like no matter where someone's coming from, whether it's like a technical topic where they're like, we should use MATLAB. And I'm like, but I hate MATLAB. Like, you know, as long as I understand where they're coming from, we can find some common ground and we can reach a conclusion and have mutual respect for each other. And that is something that I have learned like 100% through like, you know, all of the activities listed here, and like not really something I managed to pick up from classes. But yeah, just like empathy for other people, translating into like learning how to like work well with others and like manage a team, you know, so that like we're producing results, but not at the expense of anyone's mental or physical health.
Oh, and then a quick question for those who answered. Did you find yourself using those soft skills after the summer, like in classes, with peers, with professors, so on?
I didn't even answer this question, but I'll take it. I was going to say my big soft skill I developed was that I learned how to talk to strangers. Learn how to do that. COVID's been a regression, but talking with strangers is awesome. Highly recommend it. Again, I don't know, like if you're a kid, don't do that. Your parents will tell you not to, but that was probably the most helpful skill. It's helped me meet like a lot of new people at school when I went back. So
I was also going to say something similar. Like making phone calls was something I was really afraid of before having any sort of internship experience. I don't know if that's considered a soft skill, but now I'm very confident making phone calls to people I don't know. So that's a good thing.
Definitely being able to like work with people of different communication styles has translated into both. I'm an RA, which is like not summer, but and then also like in like club stuff, especially in club leadership, like being you need to be able to work with people of different communication styles and sort of like Sharvani was saying, like step into their shoes and like trying to like work with them is super important, pretty much in anything. So.
All right. And then for our last moderated question of the night, we talked about soft skills, but did you find your summer overall useful in terms of acquired skills? Like, did you find any transferability of skills, or did you find any common interests talking to other people about them? And we'll start with Sadi.
Yeah, I think like having experience working in an office is something that I can take to like basically any further experiences, I guess. And like just understanding that environment and how to communicate with other people, like everyone was saying, and like keep track of deadlines and like check in daily and stuff, just like like, you know, daily responsibilities, and just having a grasp on that. And then I would also say for summer classes, it gave me free space in my schedule to take classes that I'm really interested in but aren't required. So I've been able to take like, I'm taking my 4th Black Studies class right now that like has not been required by like anything on my syllabus. It's just something I wanted to do and like wouldn't have had the opportunity to. And it's been like, it's made me like enjoy going to class again. So I think there's like value. Basically what I want to say is like there's value in learning and like that being what you do and like finding joy in that again, because I think it's really easy to for that just to become like another responsibility. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I think one of the best skills that I've learned is how to kind of manage my own workload. I think especially at an internship at a big or even sometimes a small company, nobody's like directly tracking what you're doing at every point. And so they don't know if you have too much to do or if you have too little to do. So kind of like gauging that for yourself and knowing when to ask for more work if things are slow, or you know, when to know if things are going to pick up again soon and what everyone's kind of working on. I think that's a really good skill to have just in the workplace. And then through research, I just got a lot of like technical experience. I did a lot of MATLAB code. I also learned CFD, which is pretty important in aerospace. So I think those are really useful skills just to have on my resume for the future.
Out of my 3 summers that I now spent doing something or another, I think the summer that like I personally valued the most because it helped me grow the most like as a person and like as a professional was the summer I spent at my research lab, because like I learned how to code a lot better, which is like, okay, great, like I can write a linked list in Python, like woohoo. But like more importantly, like I learned a lot about like team dynamics and like what I liked and didn't like. And that was the summer that like through the work that I did at my research lab, because I had that ownership, which I really liked, as I mentioned, it got me to start questioning things. And I started to think about how things could be better. And like now, as anyone who's been in a Zoom call with me can attest, like I love asking questions from authority figures. And like that was a summer that really sparked that for me, first from a technical perspective and then just for everything else. But yeah, the transferability of skills was really great. But the other thing that I didn't really touch on, my other points I wanted to mention, is that that summer I also was like exploring how to teach machine learning to high schoolers, and I was also trying to explore tech policy, the ethics of AI. So like TLDR, the small moments of free time that I gave myself to just explore things that I liked, which is not something I've done a good job of giving myself in college, that actually sparked a lot of growth for me and like got me to realize I'm interested in ethics and things like that. So like people always see free time as like a waste or like unoptimized time, but like in my opinion, free time is literally just giving you the space to potentially grow further than you could have ever grown before. So like if you just want to block out a couple of days to explore a random topic you know nothing about, like that is a perfectly valid use of your time, and that can lead to like more personal professional growth than anyone can anticipate. So free time is good. Always schedule it in or like make some room for it, because it can lead to you discovering things you wouldn't have known existed otherwise. And that's what led to a lot of my growth as an individual that defined what I want to do with my career now. So yes, free time, good stuff.
Indeed, it is. Gosh, lessons I took away from my activities. Probably the first big one is that you can apply anything that you learn, well, almost anything you learn in class to wherever you're at, or just kind of whatever you're doing, if you have the right perspective with it. Another thing that I really appreciated was learning how to talk with all kinds of people, but more importantly, how to present your opinion, like Garrett said, without coming off as condescending, but still being strongly convicted of it. Basically like how to tell people about things without like coming off the wrong way. And then for technical stuff that's like actually, you know, resume building things, I got like a laundry list of technologies from those 2 summers just because I was writing a whole bunch of random software and stuff. So yeah, just learn, you know, take the time and you'll figure out how to submerge yourself in the things that you enjoy. So, or submerge.
Working with so many different people over that summer has allowed me, especially once like career fairs start coming around. One thing that people like always notice when they look at my resume is like, wow, you are student affairs oriented. And like, yes, and being able to like, because of like my abilities like to talk to people well and like communication styles, it's like being like, yes, I am student affairs and that means this and this and this for why it can benefit your company. And essentially being able to like shape your resume into whatever you want it. I think it's a really valuable skill to have. And I think that I feel like not a lot of people talk about it. It's always about buffing up a resume, but not about like enough about like spinning the resume you have into something usable. And I think that's a really important skill for people to have. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the last of our moderated questions, and we are now opening the floor to just like anyone. If they have any questions for the panelists, you guys can raise your hand or just type in the chat. Allison and Annie.
Yeah, I had a question. Shirvani, you mentioned how you were doing self-teaching machine learning. And I know a lot of my friends like want to learn code by themselves, but it's just so hard to keep motivated when there isn't class and whatever that's keeping you motivated. So how did you continuously push yourself to learn machine learning throughout the whole summer?
So I think it's about learning what makes you tick as a person. So I did this accidentally very well for myself. In the spring before this summer that I learned machine learning, I applied to be an artificial intelligence ACM officer. So like I was going to be teaching machine learning in the fall. When I applied, I did not know that much machine learning. And I was very honest about that to the people who were interviewing me. But they were like, you know, you seem legit, like you can be an officer. And I was like, great. So I knew over the summer that I would have to teach all that stuff in the fall. And that metaphorical fire gave me more motivation because like, if it was just for myself, yeah, it could have been a little easy for me to like not put in the effort to like, you know, like not motivate myself to do the work. But like the fact that I had to teach it to others because I'm the kind of person that'll like not do it for myself, but do it for other people, that like motivated me more than anything else because I was like, I can't let these people attending the workshops down. So that was honestly the best built-in fail-safe that I could have done for myself, which I don't always recommend because it is a lot of pressure and you know, you don't want to overstress yourself. But for me, I know that if I need to get something done, I just need to turn it into something that I also owe someone else, and then I'll get it done like pretty much immediately. So yeah, just like knowing what motivates you and what excites you. And for me, like helping others like really, really excites me in certain situations. So like I just kind of monetized on that fact for myself and put myself in a position where I kind of needed to learn machine learning to help others and just like not just for my own knowledge. And that worked wonders.
I had a question for just like the people who like did stuff on their own. So like, do you have an experience of just like choosing something and ending up like, oh, I like, don't really want to do this, or just like really figuring out what you want to do and like setting your mind to it? Yeah.
That's a big problem for me. Yeah, I get lost on all sorts of new things all the time, and it's actually kind of a bad habit of mine. It's like I'll look into some new thing that's going on, some sick new technology, and I'll like try writing something with it or something or another, and then it won't work out, right? And I'll just kind of like throw it in the trash or something like that. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you just kind of go down a rabbit hole and it doesn't work out, and other times it works out beautifully and you end up getting committed to a project that you really enjoy. That's kind of my method. I don't know, just throw things and then eventually one of them will find its mark. But yeah, that's kind of how I roll with it.
I will say a lot of people think that I like 100% know what I want to do because I've done space stuff for like 2+ years and like I love talking about like diversity and inclusion related initiatives, but like it's kind of not the case at all. Like I said, I treat everything like an investigation. So like if I go down some rabbit hole and it turns out I don't like it, I kind of just use that as like an arsenal. Like here's additional cool knowledge that I can potentially like use later to my advantage, which like is something that I ran into when I tried to get involved with like artificial intelligence applications for like, yes, I know it sounds like I'm going to battle, but like, what is life if not a fun game? But yeah, I ran into this with like artificial intelligence applications to medicine because like it's a super important application of machine learning and artificial intelligence, obviously. But like I tried it out and I was like, you know, like I didn't really feel like a fire or like an excitement for this. I didn't exactly look forward to my work. And like at first I was like, girl, what's wrong with you? Like you're trying to like detect like cancer or something. That's like super important. But like eventually I kind of just made my peace that like this wasn't the application that I wanted to go above and beyond in, and this wasn't the aspect of artificial intelligence that I was really passionate about. But like once I kind of cleared my head of like expectations of like, oh, like this is something prestigious that you're supposed to be doing, and kind of just phrase it like just listening to my base instincts of like, you know, am I excited to do this? Do I wake up and get excited to read papers about this? That made the decision a lot clearer for me. But it did actually end up relating to a lot of the stuff I'm interested in regarding bias in AI. So like this is an example of that arsenal being used later, because I really care about bias in AI, and that's a huge issue in medicine. So while I may not care about like furthering the accuracy of machine learning models in medicine directly, the bias aspect I can now speak to for great detail for the medicine stuff because I looked into it before. So all information somehow ends up connected and will benefit you in the long run. So don't put pressure on yourself to figure it out immediately, because later it will benefit you one way or another. I can guarantee that. Or you can Venmo me for $20 and I'll pay if I'm wrong.
All right, the next question is for Nora. Moving from company internship to research, did you notice any differences between the two? And how do you go about doing research from transitioning from an internship?
Yeah, it was really different. So the research lab that I was working in was maybe like 10 people max, and I was the only undergrad. So I was just working with a bunch of grad students over the summer. So that was really different from working at a company that has like, I don't know, 30,000 employees, maybe more than that. So yeah, I think I was pretty self-guided, and I worked closely with the grad students in the lab, which I enjoyed. I feel like the kind of relations between the two is just more about learning how to communicate with people, not be afraid of asking questions, especially since I didn't know that much about the research topic before I went into it. And when you started a company, especially in engineering, they're going to use a lot of like acronyms and like weird words that you're not going to know when you start there. So I think that kind of like aspect helped a lot with transitioning, but besides that, they were pretty different environments. So yeah, I think sort of the soft skills were what transferred over.
And then do you have any advice for someone who's looking into research, like where they should start after cold emailing, or like even before cold emailing?
Yeah, I think it's most important to try to have a relationship with the professor that you're trying to get research in. So like for me, I already knew the professor pretty well, and I think I didn't even have to apply. Like I just emailed him and he was like, okay, like what do you want to do over the summer? Not everyone is going to have that experience. So I think, you know, going to a professor's office hours and just asking them questions about their research if you're interested in it. I think I've had some friends get research through that. Like even if you're not in their class, you could have your friend who's in the class like send you their office hour Zoom link in time. I think it's a little bit easier now since we're in the virtual format. Sometimes it's just a little bit hard to get through with just an email. So I think trying to at least talk to the professor through class or something like that is helpful and show your interest.
So we have a question in the chat. If you could change an aspect of your summer activity, what would it be?
I would say like I wish my internship was a bit more guided because yeah, it was the summer after my first year and I wasn't really sure what I should be doing or wanted to be doing. So a little bit more guidance I think would have been like, even if I didn't like what I was doing, at least it would have like given me an understanding that I didn't like that or would want to look for something else the next summer.
For me, I guess my second year summer, I did enjoy basically writing just software on my own, but I wish that maybe I had like maybe changed that out for something a little bit more guided, maybe working at like a startup, like some of the other people on our panel here. So
I would say just don't try to take a summer class at the same time as working a full-time internship. I did that and it was not fun. So yeah, like, you know, everyone's been talking about, definitely prioritize your mental health and think about how much you can do in the day. Because I did not have a good time doing that.
I think for me, it was definitely like setting boundaries with how much I was willing to work outside of the work hours, because being a new student advisor is a very, very time commitment. I've said that a lot. It's like over 50, 60 hours a week. So just like cutting myself off after work hours was definitely something that it's a skill that I've since learned, but I wish I would have known that back then.
Specifically for my company internship, because I think I've talked about the importance of free time enough. Hopefully y'all remember. I think not letting myself get boxed in by like what I thought I was supposed to be doing, because they kept emphasizing all these socials for interns and things like that. And I was like, this is great, but like I suck at talking to people over Zoom. But I love questioning software systems because a lot of them are written in ways that like annoy me and I want to fix it. And I actually did end up accidentally like fixing things out of frustration because I thought it was just inefficient. And my mentor was like, oh, that wasn't required, but like go for it. But like if I'd really just like leaned into that part instead of trying to attend all these intern socials that I wasn't that passionate about to begin with, I feel like I would have enjoyed my time a lot more. So like, you know, kind of like large companies and stuff, it can be a bit intimidating to find your footing, but like that's the advantage of it being so large. There's probably something that you're interested in. It's just a matter of putting in the work to go find it. Like, so for me, it was more about like prioritizing what I knew I was interested in and just straight up going for that, as opposed to like trying to like fit the mold of like what I thought like was I should be doing as like a typical intern based on what I've heard before. You know, just follow what you're interested in and that always leads to like the best results.
And to close off our night, we have, so do you guys have any advice for people trying to like pick an activity this summer to do?
I would say if you are early on in your undergrad, if you're a first year or something like that, then don't be too concerned about getting an internship. Seems like there's a ton of pressure all the time for people to get internships and, you know, huge companies and FANG and stuff, but like don't sweat it too much. Things work out one way or another, and you'll find a way to apply the skills you're learning.
I would say, especially this summer, I know they have like asynchronous summer classes. So like if you're interested in anything or just like getting some credits done so that you can do something else during the school year, like why not? Take advantage of your time. So yeah, just do something that you like feel like, I don't know, benefits you in the long run. I feel like people have a pretty good understanding of like what might bring you joy, but yeah.
Do two things in my opinion at the very least. Do something that like excites you and like has a possibility that you think would change you or like challenge you in some way, because that's always good. Challenge in a sustainable manner, obviously. But, you know, something that'll just get you to explore something new. But at the same time, that second activity, have something that grounds you. that like, you know, makes you feel at home and like at peace with reality, which like for me, like for both of my summers where I felt a little overwhelmed at the lab and then internships, it turned out to be video games. And like I got super into video games and it was a fantastic release and like helped me feel like a human being. But yeah, just definitely have that activity that grounds you so that like when the challenging stuff gets a little overwhelming, you have a place that you can go to or like something that you do that makes you feel at home, like regardless of where you are.
I just want to piggyback off of what Sharvani was saying this last summer. I didn't really talk about it a lot. I was taking summer classes. So I was taking MATLAB, which was great because like learning coding is great and it was taking care of a requirement. And then my stuff that was fun is I was planning a bunch of socials for Materials Research Society, which is like entirely what got me through summer, like social connection, like getting through our first summer of COVID was absolutely wonderful. So just cannot stress, like do something fun, like really, you won't regret it.
All right, one more time, we'd like to thank all of our panelists for answering everyone's questions about any and all activities over the summer. And remember, having an internship is not a defining point of your character as a student at UCLA in engineering. And there are lots of activities you can do to get out of this toxic mindset and just keep yourself productive and develop your own personal growth. So once again, we'd like to thank the panelists. We'd like to thank all the attendees. If you haven't yet, fill out the sign-in sheet, and then we will be posting the video shortly afterwards. And we will also have contact info for all panelists for the attendees if anyone would like to request them for more information. All right,